Caught on tape, bin Laden celebrates how he plotted mass murder at the World Trade Center.
We calculated in advance the number of casualties from the enemy who would be killed based on the position of the tower.
In-depth coverage and analysis of the smoking gun video. Plus, bin Laden and the U.S. military in a high-stakes game of hide-and-seek. And Israel steps up the retaliation against the Palestinians after cutting all contact with Yasser Arafat.
This is the CBS Evening News with Dan Rather reporting from CBS News headquarters in New York.
Good evening. It is the most damning evidence made public yet against Osama bin Laden. The U.S. Defense Department today released a videotape in which bin Laden admits he and his terror network planned and carried out the murders of thousands of innocent people in the United States. And he expresses pleasure that the attacks succeeded far beyond his expectations. Bin Laden speaks in Arabic. The Bush administration called in independent experts who spent days translating his words into English. It's mid-November in the former Taliban stronghold of Kandahar, 2 months after the attack on America. Osama bin Laden enters a guest house and greets a Saudi Arabian Muslim sheikh who's come to deliver what is good news for bin Laden. The 9/11 attacks have gotten glowing reviews from religious leaders back home in Saudi Arabia. And then, over food and drink, at times smiling and laughing, Osama bin Laden admits to advanced knowledge of the September 11th attacks and describes where he was at the moment the atrocities began.
We had notification since the previous Thursday that the event would take place that day. We had finished our work that day and had the radio on. It was 5:30 p.m. our time. Immediately, we heard the news that a plane had hit the World Trade Center.
5:30 p.m. in Kandahar, 9 a.m. in New York. The first of the Twin Towers had been hit.
After a little while, they announced that another plane had hit the World Trade Center. The brothers who heard the news were overjoyed by it.
With a chilling nonchalance, bin Laden describes the meticulous planning that went into the mass murder of thousands of innocent people.
We calculated in advance the number of casualties from the enemy who would be killed based on the position of the tower. We calculated that the floors that would be hit would be 3 or 4 floors. I was the most optimistic of them all.
The heir to a construction fortune, bin Laden expresses surprise and delight that the planes were able to bring both towers down to the ground.
Due to my experience in this field, I was thinking that the fire from the gas and the plane would melt the iron structure of the building and collapse the area where the plane hit and all the floors above it only. This is all we had hoped for.
Osama bin Laden on this tape, unequivocally for me, what he is saying in effect is that he too was in for a surprise on September 11.
Noted scholar Fuad Al-Jami watched the tape with us when it was released.
Absolutely. It's gruesome to say it. I think he expected to kill hundreds of people. He expected some floors of the towers to collapse, but he did not expect the mayhem that happened, because once that mayhem happened, his fate was doomed and his fate was sealed.
Though the video is amateurish, bin Laden's evil comes through with stunning clarity. Coolly and casually, he tells how he sent 19 fellow Muslim hijackers off to their death.
All they knew was that they had a martyrdom operation, and we asked each one of them to go to America. But they did not know anything about the operation, not even one letter. But they were trained, and we did not reveal the operation to them until they were there and just before they arrived.
How is this likely to play in general in the Islamic world, and particularly with Arabs?
I think the tape will be seen perhaps with a jaundiced eye in the world of Islam. The audio quality is poor, the visuals are reasonably poor as well. And anyway, that world has many escape hatches and many exits. It could argue that actually this is just an American spin operation, that we've just simply doctored up the evidence and that this doesn't establish anything. I think the audience that matters is the American public, the American people. We're asking them to sanction and understand this war, and we will put out this evidence. They can see the nature of the enemy and the face of the enemy.
The analysis of Professor Fuad Al-Jami. The bin Laden video was shown today on television around the world and drew skepticism from some viewers in Muslim nations. Some Muslims said the scratchy video provided no evidence of bin Laden's guilt and may have been, as they see it, fabricated. The sound quality is very bad. It's so bad that many native Arab speakers had to rely on the U.S. government subtitles. Safe to say most Americans have long believed bin Laden's guilt, but it was something else today to hear him admit to the horror in his own words and celebrate. We sampled reaction around this country.
It's just hard for me to understand how someone can think that way. And when I see it, it just makes me feel sick all over again.
I think it's very humiliating. I think it proves he had knowledge of what went on during the World Trade Center events. I think that his day is coming, and it can't happen fast enough for me.
Beyond the emotional reaction, what about the legal implications of the bin Laden video and the admissions he makes on it? How does all this play into the criminal investigation? CBS's Jim Stewart has some answers for you tonight.
In the unlikely event that Osama bin Laden lives to stand trial for September the 11th, this is the one comment he may most regret making on that home videotape. We had notification since the previous Thursday, he said, that the event would take place that day. In other words, bin Laden is saying he knew beforehand on September the 6th what would happen on September the 11th. In legal terms, that is known as foreknowledge. And in front of a military tribunal, it just might be enough to get you shot. John Martin was a veteran federal prosecutor. Dan, apparently we've lost our tape. I can tell you, though, that the legal implications of what he has to say are extraordinary. Most prosecutors are calling this a smoking gun. They say that if, in fact, this is true, that it could be used against not only Osama bin Laden, but some of his lieutenants. And given the current military situation, it might be the last statement the world, in fact, ever hears from Osama bin Laden. And if that is the case, then prosecutors most certainly are especially gratified that the terrorist leader used it to condemn himself with his own words. Dan.
Jim Stewart reporting live from Washington. The only person indicted so far in the attack on America was in federal court here in New York City today. The judge denied bail for Zacarias Moussaoui and ordered him sent to Alexandria, Virginia to stand trial. Moussaoui is accused of conspiring with Osama bin Laden in the September 11th attacks. Now to the war bin Laden started, and the United States is determined to follow through and finish. In southern Afghanistan near Kandahar, U.S. Marines are on the move, hunting the Taliban leader, Mullah Muhammad Omar. As for bin Laden, U.S. officials acknowledge that they cannot be sure, but they still believe he is in a Tora Bora cave area of a mountain valley, being repaid in kind for the September 11th attacks. CBS's David Martin begins tonight's coverage of the war.
Bombs light up the night, and the sound of what are probably American helicopters fills the air as U.S. aircraft and commandos close in on the cave complex where U.S. intelligence believes bin Laden and his al-Qaeda fighters are battling for their lives.
If they surrender, they may come out alive. If they don't surrender, they may not. And it's kind of their choice.
It is the Battle of Tora Bora. U.S. officials say their best evidence is that bin Laden is in the Agam Valley, holed up in caves along the walls of the valley, which leads south into Pakistan. Opposition fighters, along with U.S. Special Operations Forces, including the elite Delta counter-terrorist team, are pushing down the valley while the Pakistani army blocks the southern end. U.S. warplanes are attacking the caves, trying to drive al-Qaeda down from the heights to the valley floor. Unmanned Predator reconnaissance drones are orbiting overhead, searching for signs of movement, and AC-130 gunships are patrolling the border to cut off any avenues of escape. Technology favors the U.S., but the terrain favors bin Laden, since the advancing troops have to expose themselves to fire from above. And there's always the danger bin Laden could slip through the dragnet.
There's no doubt in my mind, but any number of al-Qaeda have gone across various borders and do intend to fight another day, and we intend to find them.
Last week, Mullah Omar was thought to be surrounded in his stronghold at Kandahar. The city has now fallen. U.S. Special Forces troops are riding through the streets, and Marines are taking over the airport. But Omar is still at large.
Omar is missing. Where is Omar? We're looking for him and his senior people as well.
The U.S. believes Omar is hiding out in the mountains northwest of Kandahar and is offering a $10 million reward for turning him in. Dan?
David Martin reporting live from the Pentagon. In the Middle East tonight, U.S. envoy former Marine General Anthony Zinni is still trying to coax Israel and the Palestinians back from the brink of war. But it may be an impossible task since Zinni arrived almost 3 weeks ago. Attacks and retaliations have killed nearly 100 Palestinians and Israelis. And now, as CBS's David Hawkins reports, Israel says it has had enough.
From now on, Israel will let its tanks and warplanes do the talking. The Israeli government has broken off all contact with the Palestinian Authority and its leader, Yasser Arafat.
For Israelis to imagine that somehow Yasser Arafat will change, will somehow be reformed, and take responsibilities and fulfill agreements that he hasn't done in the past is very difficult at this point.
It's the end of the peace process, at least for the time being, if not an outright declaration of war. Israeli forces today reoccupied parts of the Palestinian territories, attacked police stations and other targets in the West Bank and Gaza Strip. They knocked over the radio transmission tower of the Voice of Palestine and took over the house of one of Arafat's top lieutenants, saying they won't leave until he's arrested or turns himself in. Israeli tanks have advanced to positions on a ridge just a couple hundred yards away from Yasser Arafat's West Bank headquarters. He's not under siege exactly. Israel says they are not trying to kill him, but he is trapped, both physically and politically.
These steps are making Arafat's ability to carry out what the Israelis are asking to do, which is to crack down on the Islamists, almost an impossible task.
If Arafat continues arresting Palestinian militants, he faces a revolt from below. If he doesn't, he faces even more bombs from above. Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon appears set on getting rid of his longtime enemy and says he'll only resume peace talks when Arafat is replaced by a more pragmatic Palestinian leader. The problem is there probably isn't one.
No, I don't think that there is any other powerful, pragmatic Palestinian leader apart from Yasser Arafat.
It's always been a case of the devil you know is better than the devil you don't. But now Israel's decided to take its chances. David Hawkins, CBS News, Ramallah.
After many signals that he intended to pull out of the 1972 anti-ballistic missile treaty with Moscow, President Bush made it official today. The United States will withdraw from the treaty in 6 months, clearing the way for missile defense testing banned by the treaty. Russia's President Vladimir Putin called the Bush decision a mistake. Coming up next here on the CBS Evening News, bad blood. The government says the Red Cross isn't protecting America's blood supply. And later, Eye on America, fallout from September 11th, far from the hell of Ground Zero. Federal regulators today asked a judge to hold the American Red Cross in contempt of court for allegedly, this is the accusation, risking the safety of America's blood supply. The accusations are not new. As CBS's Cheryl Atkinson reports, the Food and Drug Administration says the Red Cross has been failing its responsibilities for far too long.
The FDA is accusing the American Red Cross of a dangerously cavalier attitude as guardian of the nation's blood supply. An FDA inspection last spring of the Red Cross facility in Salt Lake City revealed hundreds of errors that let through unqualified donors, like those at high risk for having HIV or AIDS. And there have been 16 years of similar violations around the country, which continued even after the Red Cross agreed to clean up its act in 1993. Now the FDA wants the Red Cross to be held in contempt of court, citing release of blood possibly contaminated by cytomegalovirus, which could cause illness or even death, allowing some people with syphilis to donate, and poor record keeping that could make it impossible to trace and recall bad blood.
The failures by the Red Cross over the last 16 years to take effective and timely action to correct their deficiencies in quality assurance do pose an unnecessary threat.
The Red Cross argues the FDA is overstepping its authority, that the blood supply has never been safer, and that it's gone a long way toward meeting FDA requirements. The FDA says the main goal of its court action is to get the Red Cross to stop tolerating what the government calls a lack of concern for the public, affecting the safety of the blood supply. Cheryl Atkinson, CBS News, Washington.
If there's plenty of high-fat food on your dinner plate tonight, you may want to consider this. The Surgeon General says obesity could soon surpass cigarettes as the #1 cause of preventable death in this country. Dr. David Satcher says 61% of adults and 13% of children are overweight or obese. He is calling for, among other things, mandatory physical education for all students. Coming up next here on CBS Eye on America, it may look like paradise, but it took some heavy damage September 11th.
The CBS Evening News and tonight's Eye on America segment are sponsored by Fibercon. Why drink powdered fiber for regularity? Fibercon tablets are easier and work just as well. Try Fibercon.
On the CBS Market Watch, Aetna, the health insurance company, is cutting 6,000 jobs. Aetna's been pulling out of unprofitable markets, so it says it needs fewer employees. News of job cuts helped send stocks lower today. The Dow lost 128 points, the Nasdaq almost 65. Wall Street was also spooked by a report indicating a sharp drop in retail sales in November, the start of the holiday shopping season. The U.S. economy in general, the New York City economy in particular, took a big hit from the September 11th attack in the heart of the financial district. But it may surprise you to know the attack is also taking an enormous toll in a state thousands of miles and an ocean away from ground zero. CBS's John Blackstone reports tonight's Eye on America.
In Hawaii, not even love can conquer the devastating impact of the drop in travel.
In a normal schedule, if I worked a full day, I would do 10 weddings. And now, say today, I'm doing 4, and I'm very fortunate to do those 4.
Jim Heumann is a minister who makes his living performing weddings for Japanese tourists. It's a big business. Some 35,000 Japanese get married in Hawaii every year.
They would just like to get married in a very romantic setting.
And you certainly provide that.
Yes. Well, we don't, but the nature does.
Fear of terrorism, however, has made many couples change their minds. And those who do come bring fewer guests.
Due to September 11th, close to 50% of our wedding reservations.
Down, canceled.
Canceled. All of us have had friends laid off that work in these chapels, and we're struggling.
Under the palm trees, the suffering isn't always obvious, says economist Leroy Laney.
You may go down there and walk around and see bodies and see people on the beach and that kind of thing. If you talk to anyone down there, I think they'll tell you that it's pretty grim.
Since September 11th, Hawaii has had the nation's second largest jump in unemployment. Layoffs of hotel and tourism workers have risen by more than 1,000%. Cuts have been so deep, some workers fear employers are using the attacks as an excuse to reduce payrolls permanently.
You can smell the bull. It's coming. Oh, don't worry, you'll come back to work, but it's a kind of sort of not really syndrome.
Hotels say that tourists have to come back first. With tourism from Asia down 60%, Hawaii's governor has made emergency trips to China and Japan, urging people there to travel again.
When there's trouble in paradise, it's not long before everyone feels the impact. In one way or another, almost all economic activity in Hawaii trickles down from tourism.
At the Honolulu fish auction, the downturn is reflected in plummeting prices.
We're looking maybe about 35 to 40%. That much is no longer a part of our reality.
Though Hawaii is about as far as you can get from ground zero and still be in America, the shockwaves from September 11th continue to reverberate, even here. In Honolulu, this is John Blackstone for Eye on America.
A continent apart today, 2 American warriors were mourned. Services were held in Bakersfield, California, for U.S. Army Staff Sergeant Cody Prosser, one of 3 U.S. Army Special Forces Green Berets killed last week near Kandahar, Afghanistan. And a funeral was held in Cheshire, Massachusetts, for another of the 3, Sergeant First Class Daniel Petitore. Both men will be buried at Arlington National Cemetery. So Americans today finally hear Osama bin Laden on videotape admitting, celebrating his act of murder. And on this day, remains of another of his victims are recovered. Ground Zero, New York City, 93 days now after the attack on the World Trade Center. Recovery workers risking their lives day after day, night after night, stand in silent tribute. And this is why America's sons and daughters in uniform risk their lives day after day, night after night, in the hunt for bin Laden. Part of our world tonight. Dan Rather reporting for the CBS Evening News. Good night.
For news 24 hours a day, CBS.com on the internet and on our interactive partner, America Online, at keyword CBS News.